have we even truly acknowledged the depth and the facets, all the facets of diabetes? So I mentioned earlier that, if you ask most diabetics what they think diabetes is, oh, it's a problem with the pancreas. Yeah, but the pancreas is just a piece in a much larger system. So is it just the pancreas, or is it the endocrine system? Is it the liver? Is it the thyroid? Could it be the gonads? Is there kind of a ruling organ in that endocrine system that would lead you to believe that it has more of an influential role in the outcome of all the others? I've targeted the liver as having that effect. And then, if you knew that, you look at all the other models of diabetes that we're using to study, and nobody talks about liver health in a diabetic. No one. So, okay, endocrine system. Well, what about the digestive system? The pancreas is also incredibly influential in digestion. So we have talked about, the gut health axis, right? Where your gut microbiome is incredibly important in your health. But just in a healthy system, do we truly understand the influence that the pancreas has on the digestion of food? Most people do not. Pancreatic beta cells create two hormones: insulin, which we all know and are familiar with as diabetics, and amylin. Amylin is an incredibly influential player in the speed of digestion, satiety, or the feeling of fullness, and how quickly your food is digested in order to regulate your blood sugar. That's something most diabetics don't know, right? So again, another factor when you're looking to, at those mice that are having diabetes induced by strepsitosin, alloxin, or they're genetically modified like the NOD mice, like, are we paying attention to variables having to do with their digestion or their diet? No. The answer is no, we're not. So our current research model makes it impossible to include each of the variables involved. So, you're talking about digestion, you're talking about multiple hormones, you're talking about food intake, you're talking about, the inherent, like the genes of the person or the animal experiencing diabetes. And our scientific model demands singularity in variables and controls, right? You cannot, by our standards today, isolate one thing as the answer unless in the research you have isolated it apart from anything else to know that it does what you say it does. But the body does not work as a series of individual pieces. You cannot truly understand the function of one thing without understanding its place in something much greater. And that is where we are missing the point. So we have acquired huge volumes of information on all of these individual pieces of the diabetic system without actually addressing what those pieces do when they function together, right? And for anybody like myself on the outskirts trying to take these puzzle pieces and put them together, those same standards of, singularity of variables and controls, if you are not doing that, that discredits your research. So if I say, well, I'm paying attention to digestion, multiple hormones, and my diet, well, that's not a legitimate study because you're how could you know that it was any one thing more than the other? And it's like, well, you can't really, but when you put the three together, they synergize and create this incredible thing. So we are trying to isolate pieces in hopes of finding the thing that results in something, results in a cure or healing or, resolve symptoms or what have you. and we've lost sight of where we wanted to go. And so we have to acknowledge diabetes is a systemic issue. Pancreas has endocrine and exocrine or digestive roles. It has an intimate relationship with liver health from a hormonal standpoint and from a digestive standpoint. It compounds even greater when you think about how amylin aggregation is now a factor in the development of dementia and Alzheimer's, right? So a defective pancreas is not just for diabetics. A defective pancreas is also affecting nerve cell health and neuron health in people with Alzheimer's and dementia. And then I mentioned before, seeing the liver as sort of the kingpin of the endocrine system. Iron overload has demonstrated effects in every facet of both hormones and digestive function, not just hormones themselves, but also the organs that secrete them: liver, pancreas, thyroid, pituitary, all the way up into the brain, gonads, stomach, and kidneys, right? And so you say, oh my God, Bowie, well, how do we do this, right? But healing the system requires the simultaneous use of all of our known variables. And what we're doing now does not allow for that with any degree of credibility or universal application, because it's a lot harder to regulate, and it's a lot harder to address on a uniform basis. And I've said this before, the cure for diabetes is going to look a little bit different for everyone. We all have very similar things to address, but it is not going to be, oh, here's the magic pill, take it and you're cured. That's not how this is going to go. And the big elephant in the room in all of this is the fact that cellular health and our health as a system as a whole, as a human being, is dependent upon our nutrition, the quality of our food, and our ability to handle environmental stresses. It could be toxins, it could be social aspects, that goes on infinitum. But nutrition and stress management, there are no two things that doctors know less about than nutrition and stress management. And that's to no fault of their own, really, because they're not being taught it. It's not being prioritized. It's not important to them and the system that they adhere to. So as a diabetic, looking up to these research institutions, you start to see these holes and you start to think, well, who am I supposed to turn to? But then you find, like, okay, well, who are the researchers and the doctors relying on? Well, there are pharmaceutical incentives, there are insurance incentives. So money has clouded a lot of the intentions in research and development for diabetes management.